It's Seeing Red, the New York Soccer Roundup. Since 2010, your weekly source for independent New York Red Bulls news and opinion. Now, from the Joe Goldstein studio, here's your host, Mark Fishkin.
We are the New York Soccer Roundup. We're going to do something a little different this week since we just had the holiday weekend. We've got Charlotte coming up tomorrow on Wednesday, and then Atlanta on the weekend. And we thought we'd just kind of do an interview as the prep and preview for the Red Bulls hosting Charlotte FC at Sports Illustrated Stadium. And I thought, when I think of Charlotte FC, I think of today's guest. It's Eric Krakauer, who's a brand ambassador at CFC and CLTFC, excuse me. And Eric has been in and around the club since its inception. Eric, welcome back to Seeing Red. How are you, sir?
Great to be on Seeing Red. I can't believe I'm on with Mark Fishkin. This is a big moment for me.
It's a big moment for me having you. This team has some very high-profile additions with Wilfried Zaha. Aguimang is blossoming into the young star of the league that I think everyone is hoping for. He's getting U.S. men's national team call-ups and scoring in those games. But this team is a 500 team, just like the Red Bulls. They're in the middle of the Eastern Conference dog pile. What's the overall picture of what's happened in the first half for Charlotte FC this year?
Well, the picture up until the big win against Columbus was looking a little hazy.
Yeah.
And some of the demons in the fan base were starting to rear their ugly heads.
You're too new to have demons, Eric. Come on.
Well, fan bases, they're fickle and they're opinionated, and they have every right to be if they're paying for tickets and merch and what have you. But the last month has been a particularly difficult month. May, I think they conceded 17, now maybe 19 goals with the two goals conceded against Columbus, where they defended, I thought, very well against arguably the best team in the league. But it was one of those wins that needed to come because they have 5 away games in a row, which is ridiculous for any team to go through that, particularly in MLS, where there is such a discrepancy between home and away results.
Right.
And of course, it starts in the worst way possible for Charlotte FC fans because it's against the New York Red Bulls, who fans consider their bogey team. More on that in a little bit. But overall, a lot of optimism. At the beginning of the season, there was a belief that the team could contend in the Eastern Conference. I was certainly among those who believed that. This slip may have turned some heads and perhaps sobered up some expectations. But I think that this is a little bit of a blip in what will ultimately be a very good season.
Yeah, I mean, listen, especially with a player like Zaha, who has come in. I've read some things that his introduction to MLS has been a little rough. To be fair, it seemed like a generation of MLS ago. MLS, I guess that was 3.0. Who the hell knows these days? But international stars would usually get a half a season with the understanding that it's a new league, it's a new continent. That's, in some cases, a new language, not for Zaha, but the notion of coming in and becoming adjusted to the league and everything that it has to offer, sometimes that can take an entire season. But Zaha with 4 goals so far on the year, what has the overall grade of his performance to date?
Well, it is a new language. Have you been to the South? He's
learning adapting. Waffle House and Buc-ee's. What can I tell you?
Look, as you said, difficult league to come into, transitional in nature.
Yeah.
Almost every foreign player that I speak to, whether at Charlotte or around the league, says exactly the same thing.
Right.
A lot harder than expected. People have no idea how good the players are abroad. That is that is the perception still, whether or not it is changing. So it's not whether or not it is changing. It is changing the perception about the league as it grows, as bona fide stars arrive and succeed or not.
Yeah.
But that perception is still out there. I was among those who thought that it was going to be a little bit of a tough beginning for Zaha for a couple of reasons. The ones we mentioned, and another one, he had a family in England. His wife was about to give birth.
Oh boy.
He didn't play as much as he wanted to at Galatasaray. His time at Lyon as a Lyon player has been blemished for a variety of reasons, many of which I don't know exactly. But he didn't come here in the best shape possible, and I think the club knew that. They knew what they were getting, and he is now in shape. And as he is closer to that ceiling that we all know from his time at Crystal Palace is very high. Yes, he's 32, but when you watch games as closely as I do, and I'm usually on the sideline by the VAR screen, which is an adventure in itself, you can see just how zippy he is, how silky and quick his feet are. So I think we still have a lot to see from Zaha, and we saw that against Columbus, probably his best performance.
And again, a big win against Columbus on the weekend, breaking a 4-match losing streak. You can call the Open Cup match a draw and then a shootout loss, but nevertheless, a month of losses, a couple of weeks of losses, not great. Now they come on the road, as you said, the first of 5 straight away games, which is absolutely bonkers. And is that necessitated because Bank of America Stadium is being used for one of the? Are they being used for a international? Like what? Why? I have never seen, short of a stadium being not yet complete, an in-season road run of that many matches.
Yeah, we're in concert season, so Shakira was just here. I had 2 tickets. My daughter and my partner went and loved it. Metallica is in town, I think, this week or the next, and then you have the Club World Cup. I believe it's 4 games in total, 2 group matches, 2 knockout matches. So all that has played a part, and I'm sure there's something else that I'm missing. But this is, I think, the longest away run outside of Montreal at the start of their campaigns. And you know how difficult that is for that club.
Yeah.
So it pegs them back a bit. So it's, that win, as I said, comes at an important time because the club was sliding down the standings.
Yep.
And 5 games on their travels in this league, very difficult to tally points.
Now, you had mentioned that New York is a bogey team for Charlotte, and I do want to get to that. But I'm seeing that Pep Biel has come in as the 10, making things happen. 7 assists on the season, nothing to feel. That's a pretty nice mark coming up on the midway point of the season. Aguimang has 7 goals. Lil Abada has 5. So is it the guys who need to be scoring goals are scoring them? I've read about Tim Ream and his 37-year-old legs. What is happening in the back for this team?
When Tim Ream arrived, there were questions as to whether the tandem of Malanda and Privet would continue. And that became an issue because, as we all know, Charlotte had the 2nd best defensive record in all of MLS. Only Seattle did better. So it became a situation where Dean Smith had to find a way to incorporate Tim Ream. And of course, you have to do that because he's a U.S. international, a starter still at 37.
Okay.
And at first, he took Privet out of the lineup, put Ream as one of the 2 center backs. That didn't work out particularly well. And what he then did was play the 3 together, with Ream defensively slotting in as a left back, which he's done in the past, even with the U.S. national team. But with the ball, they attack with 3 center backs. So they build, better yet, with 3 center backs. And it proved effective last season. It forced Pep Biel to shift a little bit, play a little bit more on the right, cutting inside. Now he's a more traditional 10 this season, and it's paying dividends. But I think that the narrative about Tim Ream being 37 on rickety legs and having a bad campaign are overblown. I think he's been unfortunate. Has he been at his best? No, but I think he'll be back at his best in a little while. And worth remembering as well that this is a guy who's had his domestic campaign interrupted by international play.
Right. No, crazy. But again, as you said, the team's given up 14 goals over the last 5 games. And so what is it? The 6 is in front of the back line. I mean, Kalina, usually a very, very steady hand back there. He has only 4 clean sheets. He's given up 23 goals. I mean, this is not what we expected coming out of Charlotte. And I think that's why a lot of folks are maybe scratching their head a little bit.
Yeah, look, individual mistakes have certainly been an issue. Kalina has made 3 high-profile mistakes. He's one of the steadiest hands in the league. He is the reigning goalkeeper of the year. Defensively, again, there have been some individual mistakes. One that comes to mind in a game where Charlotte were dominant against Inter Miami in Miami. Privet and Malanda both had a lapse in concentration, and Luis Suarez capitalized. Of course, he did. He's Luis Suarez. So you've had moments like that pop up in a variety of games. In Colorado, I didn't think the midfield defended particularly well. I thought the same for a short period of time against Chicago in a big loss at home, which is an anomaly. And then a little bit of, some lack of fortune, I think, is the way that I would put it. They've just been unfortunate at times that some players that they've come up against have had big games or scored some really good goals as well. So it's been a little bit of everything.
Let's talk about the bogey factor. Charlotte has lost only once. Excuse me. Charlotte has beaten the New York Red Bulls only once. It was way back in the first league meeting that the team has had way back in June of 2022. That's a long time ago. Obviously, there was a playoff game in 2023 where Elias Manuel went bonkers. He always seemed to score against you guys. He's now off the team. What's the overall feeling in camp coming up to a place where, frankly, they've never won?
I don't think there's any concern amongst the players or the team at all. I don't think Dean Smith is somebody who looks at the record and thinks, oh no, this is a team we don't want to face. He's not like that at all. In fact, he is as level-headed a coach as I've ever met. He's never too high, never too low. In fact, he'll tell you that. I'm never too high, I'm never too low. Times are never as good as they seem. They're never as bad as they seem. He says that.
Yeah.
And I believe that he believes that. And that sort of steadiness, his presence, is a calming factor for the players. It's the fan base that is a little bit edgy when it comes to the New York Red Bulls. You mentioned Elias Manuel. What's interesting about this matchup is that the 2 biggest protagonists in this matchup are both gone. Ben Bender, who I think has scored 4 goals, 2 of them at Red Bull Arena, Sports Illustrated Stadium.
It's all good.
I was actually on the call for that one. It ended 2-2. He scored the first in the only win against the New York Red Bulls. They're both gone. So somebody else is going to have to, carry the flag for one of these 2 teams. But I'm expecting a Charlotte team that is or has been buoyed by the result against Columbus. Maybe there was a little bit of a loss in confidence, although the players will deny it. Getting a win against a team like Columbus, I think, raises the spirits.
Makes sense. The road team has never won in this series. That's 8 games old. Charlotte is not a particularly strong road team. The Red Bulls just got their first road league win all season on the weekend at DC. In the case of Charlotte, obviously you've got a situation where you're playing at home on the turf. It's a different feel. And yes, for everyone that tells me, no, it plays just like the real thing. I saw that. Yeah, it doesn't. It's not the real thing. And perhaps playing on grass, just different enough to make it really difficult. I know the Red Bulls story on grass, or rather away from Harrison. Why so poor away from Bank of America Stadium this season?
I think they've been very unfortunate. Again, and if you look at the stats sort of back that up. They lost in Nashville 2-1. Nashville didn't really have too many opportunities, and Charlotte were profligate. You mentioned the goals scored by Abada and Ajiman and Pep Biel. Pep Biel has been near perfect. He is the catalyst for the attacking side of things. When he's not in the team, and he wasn't in the team against Orlando, they don't have the same sort of dynamism. They don't carry the same sort of threat. And yet they lost that game too, but created as many chances as Orlando did. They just caught Martin Ojeda on an inspired day. In fact, he's having an inspired season altogether. Ajiman leads the team in goals with Abada, I believe, but he has actually spurned a lot of opportunities, and that was something that was beginning to weigh on him, and he fully admitted it. So I think that the fact that he got a brace against Columbus and should have had a hat trick, he missed a glorious chance at the end of the game, is going to inspire some confidence, and I think we're going to start seeing him at his best once again. Not to mention that he scored in DC, and he scored before that against, I forget, was it Chicago? One game is blending into another because there's so many of them coming
so fast,
thick and fast. So I think he's now hitting form. Pep Biel has never really had a dip since the start of this season, and we're starting to see everybody else catch up. One of the question marks is what happens, or who fills in for the absentee Bram Bronico,
right,
who has been a stalwart for this team since 2022. So I completely agree with you that turf makes a difference, not only for Charlotte, but plays against the teams that visit Bank of America Stadium. But this year, as opposed to the previous 3 seasons, their away form or the results are not necessarily reflective or representative of the way they've played in hostile venues.
Fair enough. Before we let you go, you've been really generous with your time, Eric. Is there one player on Charlotte's side that we haven't mentioned yet that may be someone that Red Bull fans would be keeping their eye on tomorrow night in Harrison?
Look, I think Adil Malanda is pound for pound the best center back in the league. I'm surprised that he's still in Charlotte, to be completely honest with you. I know that I'll get some flack for saying that on the podcast, but he's tremendous. He's so good on the ball, makes everybody around him a little bit better. But I'll put the limelight on Pep Biel. I said last season on a podcast with Lloyd Sam, former Red Bull great, I likened his arrival to Carles Gil's arrival in New England. I'm not saying that he's as good as a player. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but a very similar career trajectory, career arc, where he was a dominant player in lesser leagues, let's put it that way, and was never able to really convince in a bigger league. Comes into MLS, slow start. He was injured, didn't get the preseason, but with a preseason under his belt, we just see the quality that he possesses, and he just changes the game, and he plays without any pressure. So if Charlotte are to do well tomorrow, Wednesday, I think that he'll need to be at his very best.
Awesome. Fantastic. Where can folks find you on the internet, sir?
I don't want to tell you.
I mean, I can see it right there on the screen. So
yes, at Eric Krakauer on basically every platform, although I'm trying to wean myself off of Twitter.
Yes, we have weaned.
Yes,
thank you so much for joining, Eric. The teams are going to play later in August, and hopefully we can catch up again. Thanks so much for joining, man, and thank you so much for listening to this abbreviated Seeing Red. We'll be back with a full show before the Red Bulls take on Atlanta on the weekend. Eric, again, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.